was going to try to bleed out and started going through the process. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna get one more in first. So I started smoking a blunt. I was like,
Sure.
let me calm my nerves.
Yeah.
My hands were shaking.
Yeah.
Like
No doubt.
I was like, I'm going to end this.
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes and they go real fast. They're mental defectives.
Welcome to the Mental Defectives podcast, a show where we interview interesting individuals with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Milligram. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you know me. Joined, as always, by the hot guy of Harleys, the gearhead with the heart of gold. It's Mr. Jerry with a G.
Glad to be here.
And today...
Oh, hold on. Tap the brakes, just like you should tap that like and subscribe button if you dig what we're doing.
Like and subscribe. Because today, we have a very special guest. He is a father, coach, educator, newly minted author, a world traveler who would give Rick Ross beard envy. He is the man. You know him, you love him, Mr. Tyler. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. How y'all doing?
Good. How's it going?
Dude, it's been a day, but it's going good. Like, I can't complain. Like, it's been nice.
Hell yeah. Appreciate you coming on. Tyler, where are you from?
So I was born and raised here in Columbus. Actually, not even 10 minutes away from where we're at right now.
Hell
like,
yeah.
Nice.
I think we talked about that. Like,
Yes.
hey, you know that spot? I was
Yeah.
That's I grew up right there.
The spot by the place.
Oh,
is what he's
that
referring
place.
to.
Yeah, the spot.
And then when did you get going with alcohol?
So alcohol actually wasn't my first thing. So, take that back. Kinda like my parents always had like grown-up parties that was like, all right, go in the basement and hang out. And like every now and then, like I would go up and like see for like empty cups and stuff. But like my real journey into it, like I started with weed was probably around 13ish.
Hitting that Pepsi can?
No, actually I did start like slightly higher. We did roll our first joints.
Fancy over here. Okay.
I met people who knew what they were doing when I
Yeah.
first started, so they then just taught me those tips and tricks. There was multiple times it wasn't a Pepsi can, it was a Mountain Dew bottle and a pen cap.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell
Little
yeah.
bubblers. Oh yeah, those are great.
Hell yeah.
Dude, I didn't get good at rolling joints or blunts. It took like years into the process of smoking. For how much weed I smoked,
Oh,
to not be
sure.
good at that for
Yeah.
as long as I was is like disgraceful.
It's a talent for sure. And it's definitely, so I remember later on in my history though too, like I started just using a pipe because it was just easier. I was like, I want to do it faster. And the dude I had bought off of, I was like, hey, you want to hit it? He's like, why don't we roll a blunt? I was like, because it takes too long. Then just wait. I was like, no. Like, who waits to smoke their weed? Like, I don't know who does that.
That's hilarious.
That's ridiculous. I ain't got time for that.
Right.
Okay, so we started smoking weed at 13. Where do we go from there?
So early on, like I said, I grew up in Worthington, and there was a lot of times that like my parents smoked all the time. Like I remember like when I first started smoking weed, I was like, that's what they did. That was that smell.
Yeah.
Like, cause I knew they smoked cigarettes and stuff, but I was like, man, like those extra special nights when there was a lot of people and like people were staying afterwards. So I'm like, this smells different.
Yeah.
And like, I remember sneaking up and like getting that little bit of a contact high just cause like you're just sitting there just like listening, having fun and stuff like that. But when I first started smoking weed, like that's really all I did up until like 17. Because that's all I could get hold of. That's all I knew about really.
Yeah.
Was people around me smoke weed. So let me smoke some weed. So in high school, me and my buddy, we started smoking a lot. We ended up starting to sell a lot too because we could find it for cheap. I knew some people who had really great weed for really cheap prices. And living in Worthington, people have money. And when people have money, they want to spend money on good stuff. And I always, like, we would tax the hell out of them a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Like, oh, okay, yeah. Here's a dime, but it's actually like a 5 because then no one had scales back then. No, unless you were dealing yourself, you didn't have scales to check. You're like, all right, you eyeballed it and you're like, all right, that's good. But probably it it was probably my senior year. That was when I started to find more drugs. The first was Xanax, actually. One of the guys that I wrestled with my junior year, he graduated. My senior year, I still talked to him, and we ended up meeting at a party, smoking some weed, and he was like, hey, have you ever tried this? And I was like, no, what the fuck is that? He's like, just eat one and let me know how you're doing in an hour. I was just gone. I was knocked out. I was like, oh, fuck, I like this. And there were so many. So, like, my senior year, like, I was always a good student. I never, like, my mom said, as long as you get good grades, don't get anyone pregnant, and don't get arrested, you're good to do whatever you want. So, like, I did those 3 things so I could do whatever I wanted. And so when I was in like my senior year, I was partying a lot more, like doing the random drinking here and there. And like even early on, I remember going to a buddy's house. It was like, it had him in like winter break or something. And everyone's just having a good time. And like, I remember waking up the next morning at like, I remember up until about 11 and then waking up the next morning at like 9 o'clock. And I was like, where is everybody? Because like typically, okay, if you're at a party or something, like you expect there to be like other people the next morning. And there was like the person who like, it was their house and like 2 other people. I'm like, what happened? And the person's house, they're like, dude, you blacked out. I was like, no, like that's alcoholic stuff. I'm 17. I don't black out. And I guess I didn't do anything crazy, at least, because no one told me any crazy stories or anything like that. But I woke up and just felt normal. Like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's what you do in high school. That's how high school parties should be. And, like, it's funny because, like you said, I teach. And, like, I always tell all my kids, I'm like, all right, don't do anything stupid over the weekend. And if you do, don't get caught. Because that was always my goal in that was my goal growing up, is don't get caught. Because as long as I didn't get caught, I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And so started doing Xanax and started selling it a lot. But I had a lot of free periods during my senior year. So I would go first period, be off until third. Like I had second period off, and then I had lunch out, and then I had like 2 random classes. So I would be doing runs all day long during the school day. And I remember one day, like I went, picked up a bunch of Xanax for someone, knew I was going to make enough money to buy myself extra. And so I took a couple before I got back to school, went to my calculus class and just passed out. And like, I didn't hear the bell ring, nothing. I woke up, the lights were off. Everyone
left you there.
My teacher even left me in the room. I talked to her the next day. I was like, why didn't you wake me up? She's like, I tried. I went to go get the nurse because I thought something was wrong. I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, ooh, okay. Maybe I should back off a little bit.
Well, that's lucky as fuck.
Yeah, no shit.
I feel like they would have got the nurse and been like, oh no. Like, I thought you were going to say you woke up to like a cop or something.
Nope. That was the biggest like hindrance of me making any change, was because I never did get caught. Like I never got those big consequences other than like falling asleep in class or a few slaps on the wrist here and there.
Yeah.
And so I just kept doing my thing. But like at that time I was like, okay, I'm gonna lay off the Xanax at least. Like we're gonna still drink, we're gonna still smoke, because I'm not passing out in class there. Even though that same teacher, like towards halfway through senior year, was like stopped me, because I would always come in late because it was my 3rd period class. So I had just made a run. We would always pick up a buddy, smoke on the way back. And she stopped me. She's like, Tyler, we just got to talk real quick. I'm like, what's up? Like, because I knew my grades are fine. So I was like, what's happening? She's like, well, the last couple days you come in late and you snuck past me, and well, you smell a little earthy. I was like earthy? What does earthy mean? And like, she was the nicest. Like, this lady would send kids birthday cards throughout the year. Like, I remember going to basic the following year and coming home, and she had sent me a birthday card while I was at basic.
Oh,
and
wow.
like, it was just sitting on my bed waiting for me. Like, nicest teacher ever. And like, so you could tell, like, she was super just like awkward about it. Like, I don't want to like bring it up, but like, I need to say something.
Right.
And so I was like, oh yeah, like my ride to school, they smoke, but like I don't. You know me. I'm a good kid. I got good grades. I'm on honor roll. I'm taking AP classes. I'm a good kid. And she's like, oh, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, but you should really pick your friends better. Like, oh yeah, like I will look into that. And that never changed. But no, so I did that. I was just smoking a whole lot in high school, and like typically, especially for kids who do well in school, like right around this time, people are like looking at college applications, all those things. And I'm looking at like, okay, where can I sell some more drugs at? Yeah. Like that was my prerogative. Like, all right, I need to sell a bunch because during wrestling season, I can't as much. And so let's do this. And I remember like people asking me like, hey, what are you going to do after high school? Like you're a good student. Like, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Like in my mind, I was like, okay, I got plenty of time. Like I didn't know about deadlines, those types of things. Like those weren't on the forefront of my mind. And so going through, and it's my senior night, and it's like a week before, and they give me a little like slip, like, hey, fill this out so they can announce it at senior night. And it was like, oh, what are you going to do after high school? I was like, fuck, I don't know. And I was like, my mom's going to be there. My grandparents were there. Like my brother, my sister, everybody was there. And then like, no, wrestling, not everyone's coming to anyways. But like there was I was like, I don't want to be the one kid. Cause like we had two kids. One went to the Air Force Academy. One went to the Army, like Army West Point Academy. I was like, all right, like I can't like not, like I got to still like have this reputation about me. And so I was like, all right, I think I'm going to go to the Army. Didn't say anything to my parents, like mom, grandparent, never said anything to them. So they show up on my senior night and they announce that. My mom looks at me like, the fuck? I was like, I'll talk to you afterwards. And that was literally the starting point of my military career at that point, because like the next week I went and met with a recruiter, started talking to them, and I was like, all right, what do I need to do? They're like, well, you just got to graduate high school and pass a drug test. I was like, oh,
I can do one of those things.
Yeah. Sure. I was like, I definitely have one of those down pat. Yeah. And it's always funny when I look back at like getting ready to go to the military, because like they do a whole physical and stuff, and like I'm partially colorblind. That was when I found out that I am, because like, have you ever seen those colorblind tests?
Yeah, with
like,
the dots.
The little
yeah,
dot.
yeah.
Yeah, can't do red and green. And it's the funniest thing ever, because like I'll do it with my students, and like my higher level students, when we talk about it, and they're like, how do you not see that? I was like, my eyes don't work that way.
It doesn't.
And like, you can't see, they'll trace out the number and stuff too. I'm like, I don't know. And so they were doing that, and the lady looks at me while I'm doing this physical. She's like, dude, if you get like 2 of these wrong, you can't join. So she literally held up a red marker. It was like, what color is this? I was like, red. And then a green one was like, green. And then a blue one, I was like, she's like, okay, you at least can tell your colors. You just can't do this. I was like, well, what does that mean? She's like, means I'm signing off, and you're just not going to tell anybody ever again.
Damn.
The American military, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the standard level that we're at.
Just think there's some dude on a nuclear sub, and they're like, fire the thing, press the red button. He's like, oh, just fucking guessing. Just guessing. Jesus.
Yeah. But luckily, like, I've never run into a situation where it's like, hey, press that one random button in the midst of other buttons. So I'm like, okay, cool. I know my colors. Like, I learned that in elementary and kindergarten. Like, I can do those things. Just don't put them together.
Right.
So you just decided to go to the Army. Like, you have good grades. You probably could have got into a bunch of different schools. But you just decided the Army just pulled something out of your ass one day, but then followed through with it.
Yep. But then he followed through. That's the whole thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
So growing up, like my mom to this day, like, so I grew up, I have a lot of brothers and sisters. I love my dad, and I've told him this before already, so he won't get mad if he sees this. But like, he is a man whore. Like, he had, like, I've got 10 brothers and sisters, one of which is my full-blooded sister. One. And so
so you're not wrong.
Yeah, I grew up with her and my older brother.
That's rapper numbers.
He was going for a full football team, but he settled at least for basketball with some subs.
Okay,
like,
fair.
But so growing up, like I was the youngest of the kids that I like. My brother, my sister, and I. And like my sister will tell you that like, or my mom will tell you that I'm her favorite. Like she will tell my brother and sister like I'm the favorite. And so like growing up, I always had this like golden child like put on me. And so I was like, I gotta live up to something. Like I have to maintain that level that everyone else thinks I'm at. And like that was a huge driving force for a lot of my younger age is like, okay, people expect me to be here, I gotta be up here because like they expect this, so I have to achieve better than that. I've got to be better than my brother, I got to be better than my sister. And like because that external like validation from other people, that's what I thrived on. That's what my entire self-confidence was. If you told me I did bad on a test, I'd be like everything shut down. Everything was the worst thing possible because I needed other people to tell me I was okay. And so, yeah, I did follow through. I was like, I said I was going to do it. I gotta do it now. Like I can't, especially because you can't say you're going to do it and then not do it either. Like
and
that's
announce
even
it
worse.
like a big like thing with hundreds of
event.
people and your entire family.
Didn't even know it until after, like a week after they put it on the announcements too. So it went out to the rest of the school. I was like, what are we doing here? And like that was that spot where I was like, all right, yep.
Okay, so you go to base. How do you get around the drug test?
So
And that wasn't a concern of like, oh, I'm smoking like weed every single day, and I'm like probably addicted to Xanax at this point, but I'm just gonna hit basic training. Like,
so I actually I stopped for about 3 weeks because I was told, I was like, okay, like I talked to enough people. They're like, all right, you're in good enough shape. You're young. It sticks to your fat, so like you just sweat it out. You'll be okay. So I stopped for like 3 weeks, and then my uncle died, and so I don't know if you have ever been to a black funeral before, but like we party hard after funerals, and like the entire black half of my family smokes weed, and so like we're smoking, and like I wasn't even thinking about it. 3 days later is when my drug test was supposed to be.
Ooh.
And that was my preliminary one. So I go in, I knew I was testing dirty.
Yeah.
Go in, drop anyways. I'm like, fuck it, we'll see what happens. A couple days later, the head recruiter calls me and he's like, so we got a problem. I'm like, what happened? Like trying to play it off super dumb, everything else. And they're like, well, you had marijuana in your system. I'm like, my uncle died. I was hanging out with family. They were all smoking, everything else. And she looks me dead in my eyes. She's like, you'd have to be in like a closet and they'd have to smoke like a pound for you to have those levels.
yeah.
I was like, I don't know what happened. She's like, all right, you have one more drug test the day before you deploy. You make sure you're clean. And that was like 6 weeks away. I was like, oh shit, I got 6 weeks. Great. So I eventually still smoked for a couple weeks, let off for 3 weeks, and then ended up passing that one, go off to basic training and do that great time. Like, and I won't lie, I did enjoy my time in the military, but I was still an alcoholic and an addict, and like that's just what I do. And so as soon as like, cause I left in July, right after my birthday, did basic training, that's 9 weeks, then went down to San Antonio and I was there for 16 weeks, and that went over winter break. And so they're like, hey, because it's Christmas, you guys get to go on leave. They sent me back home. Immediately, 20 minutes after getting off the plane, sure. I'm smoking again. Not even thinking like, oh, they're going to, like, we're on leave, so they're going to drug test us again. The day, like, we get back, and then the next morning, like, I woke up, went pee real quick, because they didn't tell anybody. They're not going to tell you you're going to get drug tested. Go pee, I come back out, my drill sergeant staring me in the eyes, like, what'd you just do in there? I was like, I woke up to go pee. What do you mean? She's like, oh, well, I guess you're peeing last then. I was like, what do you tail She's like, oh, we have a drug test. I was sweating bullets, like terrified.
Yeah.
Because what happens if you...
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get to that part, too. We'll get to that part.
The Mental Defectives podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
So I found out like a couple weeks later, because like my buddy ended up pissing dirty too, but they only tested like a small sample of like the whole battalion. And so they must have just not have, that mine might not have gotten pulled or whatever, and his did. So I was good. I went, finished out basic train, or AIT would be literally like, one of my buddies, his friend lived in San Antonio. So like we'd go off base on the weekend, go grab some weed and go like just walk around at night and smoke real quick and just do our thing. And I was in the reserve. So I got to come back to Columbus and like do my thing here because I was a medic. And like, so I was still doing my thing. I started going to school. I was a medic. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go to nursing school. I started taking some classes at Columbus State for a little bit, got accepted into Mount Carmel, and start doing that for a minute. And then boom, another like surprise drug test. I'm like, fuck. Okay, this one's not. And I'm like counting the numbers in my mind. I'm like, all right, there's only like 50 of us now. There was like 500 last time. Like, I don't know how many they're going to take, but hopefully I'm not one of them. No, like 2 weeks later, my first sergeant calls me and is like, hey, I need you to come in. I'm like, fuck. So he's like, so you probably know you pissed dirty. And like, I started to act dumb. He's like, just don't do any of that. You know, you dropped dirty. We're going to keep moving forward. He's like, all right, so you're going to lose some rank. We're going to take some pay. And then we're going to just keep going. I was like, oh, shit. Okay. I was like, that's easy enough. I come in once a month anyways for 2 days.
Yeah, it's
like,
not like this is like a career path and like your day in, day out life.
This isn't my like livelihood on how much money I'm making. I'm like, this is something that like, again, I did on a whim and just kept going with. And so he was like, all right, so from here on out, like, we're going to drug test you every month. And I'm like, that's the worst thing you could have told me, that like, I know when my drills are and you're going to test me every month.
Right.
Kate. So I went to waterbeds and stuff and found like one of those detox drinks, and it said, okay, you gotta do it for 2 weeks. So I was like, all right, sweet. I got 2 weeks to smoke, 2 weeks of detox. Did that for probably 6 months straight. And I was like, cool. See, I'm good. I'm clean. And then they stopped drug testing me because they're like, okay, we got 6 months. And so they stopped. I figured I'm okay. Go back to doing my normal thing. I'm still in school working. I was working at a plasma donation bank at that point. But around that time, too, was when I first got introduced to cocaine as well.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. That was my reaction when I first got introduced to. And I went full bore, full gun right away. Like, the first time I did it, I did a couple lines. Within a week, I was doing an 8-ball a day. I was like,
Quick.
fuck, I got the money because I was getting money for my GI Bill to pay for school, which gave me extra money already. So I had extra money. I had a job, and I was like, fuck it, let's go. And we went. And so did that for about 6 months before I got caught again, because they had stopped testing me, and then a random one popped up again, and they're like, they only picked 4 people this time. They're like, Relich. I was like, oh, damn, fuck.
Damn.
So drop again, dirty. And
What's it for? Is it
For cocaine.
coke and weed this time.
Ooh.
So they call me in again. They're like, all right, this is the second time. We're going to take money. Like, so they had taken one of my ranks, but I had actually then had enough time within that year that I ranked back up. So I was right back where I ended up. And so they're like, all right, we're going to take the rank again. We're going to take some more money. If it happens again, you're going to lose your GI Bill. They're like putting all these different consequences out there. They're like, well, you could also just go get some treatment now too. Like, and that will help alleviate, and like, we'll have some trust in you. And I was like, nah,
I'm good.
I'll just stop. Don't worry. So I started back on the same regimen again, like still going to school, still doing coke. Like, that was the hardest time period. Was like, all right, I got to stop doing coke for that 2 weeks too. But then I found out, like, okay, coke doesn't take as long to get out of your system. And I also learned too that like when you come off of coke, you hit a really, really bad depression. So the first time I was like, oh no, I can't do that. Like, this is not okay. And so did that. Eventually got caught up a third time again. And like this time they're like, dude, we can't help you at all. And like at that moment in time, like all that like golden boy, that exterior, like all that started to crumble in on me. And like obviously coming off of coke, like going on and off of coke, like was not in a good mental state at all. And like that was the first time that like suicide had really hit me, and like that ideation. And I was like, well, fuck it, if I'm gonna do this, like there's no turning back. Like I'm not gonna, I didn't, again, I need to be at the highest achieving. So I'm like, I'm not gonna be the guy who attempted and failed. And like
You follow through, man. You follow through.
Yeah.
And like, and I don't want to laugh about it because yes, like mental health is fucked up, but like I have to laugh about it because of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
But so
Well, obviously he didn't follow through on
Well,
this.
no, I'm just saying.
I did not.
No, I get it.
I did
like,
not
yeah, no, I get it.
succeed in that
Yeah,
plan
for sure.
So like, and I still remember I don't remember the date, but like I was supposed to go out with the woman who's now my son's mom. Supposed to go out on a date with her. I wrote a letter, be like, hey, it's not anyone else's fault. This is me. I can't handle it. Everything else, like I was coming off a really big coke binge, had a bunch of other drugs on board too, just random party drugs and stuff like that. But then she came over early. She wasn't supposed to be there for like 3 hours. So I was like, and like I had this whole plan. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do it at home because then someone's going to have to clean it up and then they're going to not want to come into the room. So I was like, all right, I'm going to drive somewhere else and that's where it's going to happen. And so I left the note. She gets to my house early and like we never locked our doors. We lived in Worthington. We didn't lock doors because who's going to rob us in Worthington? So she gets in, she finds the note, starts calling my mom, calling my dad, calling my best friend and everything else. And so like as I'm driving, my phone just starts blowing up. Just blowing up. People calling left and right, like leaving messages. Like my buddy's dad, like who, like I've known the dude since I was in first grade at that point. So like at that, probably 16 years at that point, calling, leaving message, like crying on the phone, leaving messages. And I had never heard this man cry before ever. And like that was starting to stick with me a little bit. So I parked at a rest stop. Little did I know that my mom had called the police and said like, hey, he's suicidal. Like someone go find him. And the police were like, well, if he's not missing, we can't do anything. They're like, oh, she was like, oh, he's been missing for 4 days. Lied to him. Right. So they started pinging my phone.
Fuck.
And when they saw that my phone stopped, they had two fears. Like, did he throw his phone out or did he actually stop? And so I stopped at this rest stop. Like, I'm not going to go super deep into the plans, but like I was going to try to bleed out and started going through the process. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to get one more high in first. So I started smoking a blunt. I was like, sure. let me calm my nerves. Yeah. My hands were shaking. Yeah. Like, no doubt. I was like, I'm going to end this. And like hearing those messages and everything else, like I was like, all right, I'm gonna sleep on it for 30 minutes. I'm gonna take a quick nap. Woke up and like I'm in a Jeep and I had my windows on, everything else, and I heard this boom boom boom. Like if you ever been in a Jeep with like the plastic windows.
Oh yeah.
Like so it's not like a thunk, but I hear this thump thump and I'm like, the fuck is happening? And then I see 4 flashlights staring at me. I'm like, oh shit. Cops are like, hey, are you Mr. Rutledge? I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, we got some notifications that you might be in trouble right now. And I was like, nah, I'm good. They're like, all right, well, we still need you to come with me. They ended up putting me in cuffs to get me into the car. Took me to because I drove just like an hour north on 71. So I was close to like Akron area. They drove me to some random like ER that then took me from there to a psych hospital in Akron. Spent like 3.5 weeks there because I was like, I'm telling you, it's the drugs. That's why I was depressed. They're like, well, your plan was so severe that we are actually afraid that you might do it again. I was like,
sure.
Oh, well, yeah, that was the plan was to make sure I died. So that I guess that makes sense. And I was in nursing school at this time and like I was in their advanced program. So like I missed 3.5 weeks of school. They're like, you can't pass this semester. And I'm like, so that's hitting me again some more too. And I'm like freaking out. But I eventually get out of there and probably about a month later, like all of life changes again because girlfriend at the time says she's pregnant. My grandfather got diagnosed with lung cancer, and like my parents split when I was younger, and so we were living with my grandparents. So like he was kind of like a surrogate dad, and so like I'm like, fuck, like, okay, I'm glad.
And not only this, my entire family, extended family network of everyone you know is like, oh yeah, last month Tyler tried to kill himself.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Right.
and
Which is probably
also
not a
getting
great-
kicked out of the like now everyone knows too that I was getting kicked out of the military.
yeah, no military, no
And
school. Yeah.
So like everything started crashing in on me again, and like luckily, yes, I had a counselor. I was on meds at the time, and like obviously I'm still here, but like that was a really rough time for me, and so.
And were you still using through this period?
Started like I went back to just smoking weed for a long time because like I knew I was not going back to the military, and like luckily when they called to finalize my discharge, like they had gotten wind also of my attempted suicide, and so instead of giving me a dishonorable, they gave me a general under honorable conditions and put it under a mental like as a mental health concern.
shit.
And like that's probably one of the luckiest things possible for me because like you can't even get a job with a dishonorable, like you can't go to work at McDonald's with a dishonorable discharge because if the military kicks you out as a dishonorable, who else wants you? And like
So that's interesting. Actually, I did not know that.
yeah,
So it's almost like more severe than like a felony.
it
I would
is.
say.
It's on the same level because, like you said, the bar to get in is really low, and you have to fail really high to get out. They get kicked out at least because they will do
Right.
everything they can to keep you in. And at least I will say this is what the out processor or whatever said to me, and like, and I've had a couple people ask like, why do I have a general discharge instead of an honorable? And even that has lost me a few opportunities
in like jobs and stuff. Oh, wow.
Really?
Okay, because so I'm thinking like when you apply for a company, all the company can say legally is like, yes, this Jerry worked here from 2002 to 2006. That's all they can say. But you're saying a dishonorable discharge is more like a felony where they run a background check and the military can say, yes, he served in this time and this was his.
So if they know you've been in the military, that's the other kick. So if you get kicked out and never say anything ever, but then you have like a gap,
Right.
if you can explain
Right.
the gap, then it's
Yeah.
okay because no one knows.
Right.
But like I still held that badge of honor, even though I didn't do anything in the military. I didn't go anywhere. I was in the reserves. Like I was like, yeah, I was in the military, like hoping that would get me a foot in the door. And so I would put it on there, and then people would ask like, oh, what kind of discharge? Because like I remember I was sober actually. I was working at JCPenney. A dude who worked at Key Bank was like, hey, have you ever thought about banking? Because like he just liked my customer service and everything. He's like, here, take my name, take my number. When you apply, use my name, and I will get you an interview the next day. I was like, sweet. Like, so I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm golden. I'm ready to go in. The lady I interview with was a retired master sergeant, and she's like, so why a general? And like typically when people ask, I'm like, oh, it was mental health concerns and stuff like that, because most of the time, most people don't know enough about the military. She's like,
Yeah.
well, what actually happened? Because they wouldn't have done that without this. And I was like,
Shit.
well, so I tried to kill myself, and that's when the interview turned really bad too, and did not get that job. But like, and she even said like when they find out that people have general or dishonorable, like they automatically like, no, we don't want you, because if you can't meet the like, love the U.S. military, the standards for it are pretty low. And if you can't even meet those standards,
Then they don't want to hire you
Yeah, no one wants
anywhere
it.
else. Yeah.
And so a lot of people who
Interesting.
do get those kind of just don't say anything.
Sure.
So it's not like they don't advertise it, because no one wants to advertise like, oh, I got kicked out of the military.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna do that typically.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay, so baby mama's pregnant. Grandfather diagnosed with cancer. We're smoking weed only at this point.
Yeah.
Where do we go?
So because he had cancer, he got a lot of pain meds, and around this time, my cousin was selling a lot, got introduced to pills. Like he started selling himself. And then I remember, because I had to go pick up my grandfather's medication, that he was getting oxys. So I was like, oh, my grandpa's got oxys and he got morphine. So started stealing oxys and morphine from him. And that was the train into opiates for me. And like still drinking throughout this whole time, like on and off, but like drugs were my go-to. But so started going down that road, started selling, started doing a lot, like got to the point where I like one of my lowest, like I would be stealing money from my grandparents, stealing like I never stole like things because like my grandma would be like, oh, here, take my card, go to the store. And like at that point, Kroger wasn't doing the like you had to pay a little bit to get cash back. Like as long as you put in the debit card number, you got cash back. And so that was my hustle to get money. And so started doing that just to fulfill, because like at first I was like, oh, I'll make enough money so I can feed myself. Like that'll be great. Then baby came along, more money needed to be passed out, everything else, and I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. And so eventually me, son's mom, son, we move out to Reynoldsburg, still doing my same thing. I'd gotten a job, like I'd gotten kicked out of nursing school because was stealing from work. Got caught stealing from work in the dumbest of ways too. So like we had a volunteer and I'd taken her purse and like threw it in the employee trash can for some reason. And then like 3 days later they put a dummy purse in our break room. And for like 2 weeks it just sat there. It sat there like with $40 just sticking out of the corner of it. And I'm like, don't do it. It's a trap. Yeah. It's a trap. Don't do it. It's a trap. And then eventually I gave in. I was like, nah, I'm going to take it. And no more than 30 minutes later, like the security guard's like, hey, I'm going to need you to come talk to me. And like, I was like, you know how when you were in high school, you wore like basketball shorts underneath like your jeans and stuff. I would do that with my scrubs. And so I was like, see, I got nothing in my pockets. And then he's like, you got pants underneath those? I was like, yeah. And then pulled out the money. So they fired me from Mount Carmel, kicked me out of school.
Ooh.
And again, everything feels like it's crashing in on me. And I'm like, all right, I need to do something. And that was the first time I went to go get treatment. And I was like, cool, I'm going to fix up my life. I'm going to be good. I spent 12 days in treatment and got paid literally the day I left and went straight to my pill lady's house. Was high within probably 45 minutes because I had to stop at the bank first and then got to her house. And just started running again. I would go, like I was doing what they call like that, like half day in, half day out. So like I would go home, get really high and come in and not do drugs, at least because I was like, okay, I'm going to be like respectful of the people in treatment. Like I'm not going to do drugs next to you, but like I'm going to still get high. Eventually got caught there. Like I had stole some money from my son's mom because she let me come back for a little bit while I was in treatment. She called my counselor, was like, hey, this money's gone. Can you ask him? And like I always would be like whenever I lied, like I wouldn't be able to make eye contact. My counselor's like, well, every other time you've been able to look me in the eye and now you're just acting a little weird. So I knew that I would eventually have to piss, so I had a little like bottle of like lemonade that I taped to my stomach because I was like, I'm not gonna do water because that'll look suspicious.
Yeah.
So I did lemonade, thinking, okay, cool, like it's yellow. Like when you have it in such small quantities, it still is very clear. And the dude who took me in, the tech, like just let me go in the bathroom. So I was like, oh shit, here's my pee. And then they were like, yeah, he messed up. So my counselor was like, all right, now like I'm gonna be right here. And I was like, damn it. So they run the drug test. They're like, all right, you should go back upstairs. I was like, nah, I'm good. Literally went.
Oh, they want to inpatient
you?
yeah,
they wanted me to go back inpatient. So like, all right, go smoke a cigarette. We're gonna get your paperwork to go back upstairs. Literally went and started smoking a cigarette, looked back, they closed the door, and I sprinted off. Just ran. Because like, it was probably, I think I ran for like 8 minutes before I got to my cousin's house. And so that's where I was going to go. My counselor's like driving, yelling at me through the window of his car, like, come back, do this, everything else. And I'm like, nope, I'm out. And so like at that point too, my son's mom was like, well, if you're not going to go to treatment, you can't live here. And I was like, it's okay. I'm going to go live with my mom. And she lived in South Carolina. Didn't say shit to her either. Just literally packed all my stuff in my old military duffel, threw it in my car and started driving down to South Carolina. Didn't even tell her. Like I told her when I think I got into Virginia, I was like, hey mom, I'm on my way down there. She's like, what? I was like, I'll explain to you when I get there. And I ended up living down there for like a year before I eventually came back to Columbus. Still was doing the same thing. Couldn't find the drugs that I wanted, so I was just smoking, drinking, enjoying life.
With a newborn at home and a...
Yeah, he was 1 at that point. When I left, he had just turned 1.
Yeah.
I came back for Christmas and stuff like that and everything else. And like it was what it was at that point, because like I didn't really want to be a dad either. And like I wasn't mad that I was a dad, but I didn't want to be there. So I come back, and because like me and son's mom, we started talking a little bit more while I was gone. She was like, okay, you can come back. Because I also lied to her and said like I went to treatment down there and like... Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
My mom was in on the lie, helping me out too. So that helped. But I come back. She lets me live there again. I get another job at a different hospital system this time and start doing the same thing. Like literally was walking through the ER going to work, and my old pill lady was in the ER because she was getting more pills. And I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? She was like, hey, meet me out the car in like 5 minutes. I'm like, bet, let's go.
Yeah.
Started the train ride over again. Started doing 30s almost like every day, multiple times a day. Started stealing from patients again this time. And like in the back of my mind,
Pills or just like wallets?
Oh no,
and-
I was money. Like
Oh, okay.
anytime I could find, like it was only cash. I would never take credit cards. It's like, all right, they can chase
Yeah.
credit
That's how you
cards.
Right.
get popped.
I was like,
Right.
that'll get me in trouble.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like again, don't get caught,
Right.
and you'll be okay. And so started stealing money again. And like in the back of my mind, I remember hearing something at treatment like, if you go back out, you're gonna do the exact same thing, only worse. I was like, and like it started hitting me. I'm like, yeah, I'm in the exact same boat right now. And so doing my thing, and like a lady said that she saw me leaving her son's room one night, because like, but I was the tech, like I was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But then they noticed that like I wasn't actually assigned to him, and he woke up the next morning missing a large amount of money. And I was off for like 2 weeks already because I had vacation set up. Like it was close to 4th of July. I get in, they're like, hey, actually, we need to talk to you first. And like my manager's there, like 3 other dudes, and just a big board tape, like big long board, like table. And then like one of those old crappy like TVs with the VHS in the bottom.
Oh, no. They got
Oh,
the...
shit.
And I was like, yep, I know this conversation. I know
Yeah.
exactly where this is going. And like,
Shit.
like I at that point though, I was ready to stop fighting, and I was like, yeah, I did it. And like, all right, well, we're gonna go ahead and take your you're fired. Like they were like, you're fired, obviously. I was like,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
You're
duh.
done.
That's fair.
You're
That's
done.
fair.
It makes sense.
Who goes to the ER with like...
A bunch of cash.
Yeah, like...
You would be really surprised how many people take cash with them when they're going to be in a hospital for a long time. So like, for you viewers, if you ever go to the hospital, if you know you're going to be there for multiple days, don't just like keep cash in your wallet. Like leave it at home. Something like, and
What
like
what do you need it for in the hospital in the first place?
food. They'll literally send family to go buy food from the cafeteria or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or like sometimes it is like they got into an accident, and so they just had a bunch of money on them, and then they had to stay longer. So there were a couple people that way too, but like most of them just brought it in, and I'm like, why would you do that? So yeah, I got fired from there again. Started seeing everything crumbling in front of me, and
But no
started-
charges?
No charges.
Wow.
And this is my own opinion, but I think the hospital didn't want to take liability for it.
Ah.
And so they're like, all right, we're going to handle this on the back end. You're not going to just part
go.
ways and go.
Yep.
I was like, sweet, I'm out. Again, no major consequences, like at least prison time or anything like that. Like no jail, no actual arrests and stuff. And so like everything's kind of starting to spiral. The son's mom let me live there for a little bit, kicked me out again. I'm living out of my car. Like, my grandparents didn't want me to live there because, like, they knew that I was stealing from them. Like, other family members, like, don't go back there. So, like, I would literally, like, drive in my car. Like, I would go do stuff during the day and then park my car at my son's mom's, like, apartment complex and just sleep in the car. Because I was like, all right, cops won't bother you if you're sleeping in a car at an apartment complex because, like, you look like you might need to be there maybe. And
might be there, maybe.
That was what was in my mind. And like, it kept hitting me like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I was like, all right, I know where to go. And so I like just showed up. I was like, all right, they'll get me in. Cause like, that's what happened the first time. I just showed up and like within 3 hours I was upstairs. I was in treatment. And so I was like, all right, we're good. I get there, they're like, oh, we don't have any beds. I was like, well, fuck, I don't have anywhere to go. They're like, well, we'll give you a call. I'm like, okay. I don't have anywhere to go. They're like, well, goodbye. I was like, shit. So I slept in their parking lot that night. And like, one of the biggest lows for me was that night too. Cause like my son was about 3 at that time. And so he called, like his mom called me, but like he calls, I'm talking to him and stuff. And like, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but I remember thinking, I can't trust him. I thought his mom was like in one ear telling him to do something to try to manipulate me. And like, after I hung up with the phone with him, it really hit me that like, I can't trust a 3-year-old child who has nothing but unconditional love for me. I was like, I need to be in there. And so that's why I slept there that night. And like, they called me at 8 o'clock in the morning. They're like, hey, we're going to have a bed available at 2. I was like, sweet, I'll be there. Showed up and was like, this is what I was going to do, and spent 21 days in treatment, like in-house, did probably another 2 weeks of like that partial here and there, and then stayed with that treatment program for probably like 9 more months after that, like with outpatient, because like I was terrified of going back to what I was doing. Right. Plus like life was getting better. So like, because I remember sitting there and one of the texts was like, all right, I'll make a deal. Because I even asked her, she had been sober for like 5 years. I was like, what makes it so good? She's like, it's not as bad as it was before. And I was like, oh, fuck. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So she's like, give it 6 months. If it's worse than it was when you walked in, cool, go back to doing what you were doing. Because obviously at least you were having fun. And I was like, okay, yeah, I was having fun. But she's like, if it's better, then stay. Keep doing this. And I was like, all right. Sure, I'll give it 6 months. And life got a lot better. Life got a lot more fun.
Imagine that.
Exactly. Like, you stop doing drugs and alcohol, and life gets a little bit better.
You don't have to sleep in your car in a detox parking lot.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I got sober, started meeting some really cool people, and like, I still had this like egomaniac mindset of like, dude, I lived in Worthington. Like, I'm so much better than all, like, cause like, yes, I would get kicked out and stuff, but then I would hear people's stories. I'm like, I wasn't that bad. Like, I never went to jail, stuff like that. And then I started seeing people that I went to high school with, and I was like, oh, you're here too. Like, and I started to realize that, yes, like, all right, this is where I belong. This is what I should be doing right now with my life. And like I said, life got better, but like, I also learned that like you actually have to like change who you are while you're getting sober too, because like the only time I've ever had a charge against me was in sobriety.
Really?
Yep.
No shit.
Was in sobrieties. So
that was the sexual assault charge that Jerry filed on you. Oh yeah, I remember this one vividly.
So I was working at a place and making minimum wage, but I was working like manager stuff, doing manager stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, you guys owe me more. So I just started pulling money out of the till. And eventually got caught up with that.
In early sobriety.
Yeah, like I wasn't even a year sober yet. And so started pulling money out of the till, and eventually they caught me. And like I was doing some crazy stuff to like sleeping with 4 different women at the same time, like same day. Like doing just ridiculous stuff because I could. I was like, I got the freedom. I got time. Let's go. Like I felt great about myself. So yeah, I'm gonna go enjoy life. And that was what enjoying life looked like. And like I realized looking back again, like I never made a single change in like my personality. Like I was like check, good. I got all these things done. I'm sober now, right? And
Like the drunken horse thief is still a horse thief.
Right.
Exactly. And it took me getting in trouble to realize like yeah, sober people don't typically get arrested for theft. And so I was like, all right, I gotta make like actually do these things. And so that's when I started looking at me as a person and like working on those defects and those things that I'm like, all right, let me not be the horse thief. Let me like just be sober Tyler again. And it turned out great for me. Like it's been really, really amazing ride. But like that early sobriety, like I said, my grandfather got diagnosed with cancer and like I knew that he was going to die like within that first year. So like early sobriety, I was like, how do you deal with death? Because like I said, my idea of dealing with death was like put them in the ground, have a great party, get really messed up and enjoy, like celebrate their life. And I was still able to celebrate it, but in a very different way. And like that was the solidifying moment for me to know that these are my people, because like I told people that he had passed away and like we had put a thing out of like when the funeral was and stuff, and like 7 of those new guys that I made a fellowship with like showed up. They like 2 of them knew my grandpa because like I'd known them from before. But like they showed up, they're like, we're here for you. Like we're here to make sure you're okay. Like you're supported too. I was like, oh shit. Like people outside of my family care about me. Cause like even at that point, people like there were still parts of my family that they didn't see me every day. So they didn't see the changes that I was starting to make. And so they were still real mad at me. Like that made the funeral a little awkward for some parts and everything else. But
sometimes the people just got to see it to really like grasp it, you know. It's one of those things like you can tell like off rip like, oh, this person's fucked up, or oh no, this person's got it together kind of thing.
Especially when they've seen you do it for decades at a time.
Right.
And so that happens, keep moving forward, celebrating my first year, super excited, everything's going great. And like then I was like, all right, I want to be a dad actually. And like so started going through the process of getting shared custody of my son. Was able to get that after my 3rd year. Started like, all right, cool, I want to go back to school. So I finished out an associate's degree at Columbus State. And like everyone's like, yeah, just keep doing your goals. And I was like, man, I don't want a job, I want a career. So one of the things I always loved going like when I was in school was teaching. Like I loved helping people out. And like in my mind, I'm like, okay, cool. Like I can be of service to other people and be able to like help people in this teaching fashion. And like, so I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a science teacher because I love science. Like I remember my 7th grade science teacher, like he is the one who made me love it in high school and like and throughout. And so I was like, all right, that's what we're going to do. So I started OSU, and like probably a month before I was hanging out with some people, was told about a program at OSU where it is a bunch of sober people going to school. And so I was able to join up with them. And like, that was huge for me because like so I graduated 5 years ago. This was like mid-20s. I think I was like 27 when I started at OSU. And like, so like already my college experience is not typical, but then being sober, everything else, like I didn't live on campus, which was nice, but it was like a bunch of my friends were younger, going out and drinking all the time. And like, it was nice having a group of people who were like doing school while also being sober too. And so I was able, like, I got a lot of huge breaks with that because that actually led to where I'm at right now, because I did my student teaching at the same school I'm teaching. Like one of the teachers, she was retiring anyways the following year. And so they're like, hey, like check him out. So like principal came and watched me while I was student teaching and then went through the whole interview process, and it was great. And like, I absolutely love where I'm at right now because again, I get to be of service to people. And like, not just like mental defects, but a lot of them still. But like I get to be of service to like further on, because like that was always my goal when I was in nursing school. It was like, all right, I'm gonna be in nursing school, I'm gonna be a nurse, I'm gonna touch all these lives, and then I'll be a nurse teacher, and then like my students will like, I was gonna make this huge network of like outreaching hands of like what I did, and then it was all gonna be me. And sobriety's helped to humble me a little bit. Be like, all right, like I had
What an ego trip that is. Hell yeah.
I had a part in helping them, but like them
I'm
living their
gonna
life.
restructure American healthcare, which desperately needs it,
Right.
and education, which also
Yes.
fucking. It's actually not a bad idea. Redo both
Let
those
me
things.
let me take care of that. I got this.
Hey, mental defectives.
Would you like to advertise on our podcast?
If so, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com.
So we can help you make a lot of money.
A whole lot of money. That's interesting. It seems like the teaching thing was kind of all like a little, even like a seed of that was there, like from early on. And something I was thinking about, like, you know, obviously we see in the news all the time, it's like a shooting here, a shooting there. Has that ever been like a concern of like, because I always thought like, thank God. That's super I'm not even gonna go there. But like, has that ever been like a thought of yours of like, wow, I'm here 40 hours a week, so like I'm exponentially increasing my chances to be present for something like that? Because it seems like every time you see it, it's like, well, that's not gonna happen here. That happens in other places. It fucking happens everywhere.
Yup. So it's always funny because like when I first got my teaching job, like one of the first heavy conversations I had with my family was like, if there is a school shooter, like I am going to do everything to protect my students, because like that was the military part of my mindset of like, I have to protect the people I'm in charge of. Like that is a necessity of what I'm doing. And so like I was like, Mom, if there's a school shooter, like I'm going to die before any of those kids die. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm not going to be the teacher who like, and no offense to any teacher who does like run height fight, like those things like to protect themselves, like good, protect yourself. But like, the mindset I can't do that. And so like, yeah, it's always, and we do those lockdown drills and stuff like that. But like, I also teach science. So like, I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, this is the perfect place to be. I've got acid. I've like hydrochloric acid.
Right.
Yeah. I've got acid. I've got fire extinguishers. I've got scalpels. I've got hammers. I've got so many things that like, if they do come in, they're not going to walk out with all the same things they came in with.
Sure.
And like a lot of my students are like, you would do that for us? I was like one, yes, like I'm paid to do that, but like I'm going to protect you. Like, yeah.
Like shit,
and it's always really like disheartening for me sometimes when like I've had a couple of students like, I don't know if anyone else would do that for me. I'm like, hold on, what? And then I'll start talking to them more and learning more about their like home life, and I'm like, okay, yeah, like I will be that person for you here, at least like outside of these walls. Like I can't do that.
Yeah,
like that like unless I'm there at the exact moment, then cool. But like those are those like super rewarding moments. I'm like, I made it, like I've at least made somewhat of a difference for this kid to where they at least feel more comfortable being here. Because my students talk about it all the time. Like there was a shooting last year, and like the day after my students were talking about it, I was like, all right, let's talk about it. Like, let's have a conversation. Like, what are your feelings? What are you thinking about? Like, why, like what's going on? And so we talk about this all the time, and it's like, it sucks that we talk about it all the time, because then people kind of start getting desensitized. They start thinking like, oh, this can't happen here, and they get desensitized. And I'm like, no, like things. There are really bad people out in the world that want to do bad things to people, and so we will be prepared. Like I will always be prepared to save your life. And like kids are like, oh, I can get out the window. I'm like, dude, that window opens this much. You're way too big to get out of that window. Like, I'll break it. I was like, yeah, and let them know exactly where you're at. Broken glass makes a lot of noise. You chill there. I got you. Don't worry. And
because especially teaching high school.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it'd be one thing if you're a kindergarten teacher. You know, that's not a concern, but it's so crazy that it's like a legitimate thing that you felt you had to sit down with your family and tell your mom, like, hey, I'm starting this job. if someone comes in with an AR-15, like, this is my plan. Like,
Yep.
that's not,
Yeah.
I don't know about your job, but that's not a thing in my day job.
That's it.
Like,
Like, no.
You don't think about that on
I have not had that
on,
conversation.
Like, even like a weekly basis?
Nah, it's not,
Oh,
not
man.
happening.
You're
yet.
missing out.
And then tell me about this book you helped author recently.
Yeah.
Because I saw that and I was like, oh shit, okay.
So equity and mental health are like my two biggest niches within education. Like I recently got my master's in equity in education, and like knowing how I felt as a high school kid, like I wanted to make sure that my students didn't feel that way. They didn't feel that outcastish like mentality. And so equity's always been a huge thing for me. And like one of my last vice principals, he actually moved to a different middle school and got a principalship when our district opened up a new middle school. He reached out to me last year and was like, hey, I want to write a book. Like, cause he's written a number of like children's books, and like they've all gone out as bestsellers and stuff like that too. He's like, I want to write a book on education for upper level. And he's like, I want to do it based off of the black male teacher perspective, because of all teachers, 2% in the entire US, 2% are black males.
Wow.
Damn.
2%.
Damn.
Like 80 something percent of that are white females. Because like, if you think back, like, did you have any black, like, and I know you went to where you went. Did you go to McCord at all?
No.
Oh,
But
man.
I am struggling. And another fucked up thing, I can't remember the statistic, but like it's one of those like social experiment questions. And it's like, go back and ask yourself, like, hey, how many jobs did you have before you had a black boss?
Yep.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. That's fucked. I'm like really struggling to think of a teacher or boss.
I mean, I have a black boss now.
Yeah, but how many jobs did you
Before?
have prior to that? I can't even think.
Yeah, and
That's fucked.
like that was my 7th grade teacher. He was the first black male I saw, and like that was right around the time my parents were splitting, and so like I needed someone to not be a father figure, but like still that I saw
Just some kind of
every
stable
day.
role model.
Yeah,
no doubt.
And so that is why he wanted to write this book. And so crazily enough, even though the percentage is so low, like at my school, we have 4 black males in the classroom. We have 2 vice principals and then also a counselor as well too. But like our concentration of black males is in the district is highest at our high school. Like there are some schools that have no black teachers at all. And it absolutely baffles my mind. But so he reached out to probably like 6 of us who work in the district and a couple other people he knows, and like was like, hey, I want to write this book based off of your perspective. And so he sent out a bunch of different questions, like give me 2 paragraphs, like half a page on each of these questions. And I did that like a year ago, and I was like, all right, cool, like things will happen, cool, whatever. And then probably about a month ago, he's like, hey, we're gonna launch in October. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, give me a date. And finally gave me the date. So I posted it because he told me, I was like, all right, if we can get a large enough set of sales on the opening day, when it then is posted again, it will be posted as a bestseller. And so we hit whatever benchmark that is. The very next day, they put it on Amazon as a bestseller in 2 different educational categories and as like a new book too. And like, so now he's like, he texted me the day after, he's like, now you can add contributing author to a best-selling novel or a best-selling book on your resume. And like literally that day,
He typed it in right now.
He said, bring that back to me. Oh, that was good. Let me put that in there.
That's awesome.
and like,
Are we seeing a check from this?
so because he is the main author.
Oh, here
I
we
don't
go.
get a
The
check.
man always trying to
But-
screw you out of a check.
I am going to get 20 of those books that I can sell on my own. And then like he said like as it grows in popularity, it could lead to speaking engagements, stuff like that. And then
And
also,
here you are.
Like exactly.
right.
Like,
Here it
and
is.
Unpaid speaking.
exactly. I will expect my gratuity later on.
You get a free T-shirt.
Oh, do I at least get to keep the cup?
No, you do not get to keep the cup, but you get a T-shirt.
Okay, I'll take the t-shirt.
What advice would you have for someone looking to get into teaching?
Make sure you love it. Make sure it is actually what you want to do, because like if you're getting into teaching because you want to have your summers off, you're gonna be miserable. It's just gonna be a miserable time. Like I love my summer. I travel, like you said, I travel a lot. Some of it is with the school, but like during the summers, I travel a lot. But find something you love too. Like don't just be like, all right, well everyone needs a math teacher, so you're gonna go teach math. Because like if you're not good at it, and you're probably not gonna teach it well, your students aren't gonna do well, and it's just gonna be a miserable time for you. But also I would say like figure out what age range, because like you can teach anywhere from kindergarten to 12th grade. Like if you like little kids, don't go teach 12th graders. Like right. I like having deep conversations. I'm not going to go do that with a 7-year-old in 2nd grade. Like I probably can't talk about the inequalities of whatever it may be to a 2nd grade. I'll do that with my son, but he's also in 8th grade now. Like he's kind of grown, and I've done it for a long, but he's also mine. So I can say whatever I want to him.
Hell yeah.
But, like, and I'm surprised that he holds his tongue as well as he does based off of how much I cuss. Like I've tried to, like, I've caught myself a couple times now, and I'm like, let me.
I don't think I've ever heard him cuss.
No, he's very good at not cussing because he knows he's not supposed to. But I think once he feels comfortable in doing it, like once he gets to that point where he doesn't and I don't react to it, I think it'll be just like a shit show of just going. Because like I've even had people when I was at OSU, like, because I cuss a lot. And like I've had multiple people who were in school with me. They're like, how do you not cuss in the classroom? I'm like, well, first off, like I'm a black man. Like I have to act the part when I'm out in public in general.
Yeah.
And so when I'm especially at my job, like, yeah, I am on my P's and Q's. Everything's going to be as perfect as possible.
Yeah, you can't be up there like the nucleus is a motherfucking powerhouse. And the fucking, you slap this fucking electron on this piece of shit.
Fucking dumb. No, I promise you, the inner dialogue is.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
deep, But it's like, all right, I can't say that. You are still a child. You are still 14-ish years old, and like you're not my child. I can tell my child, you're being a lazy motherfucker. Get your shit together. Come on, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And he's used to that. And like, is that a great thing?
Right.
But it's not the worst thing though either. Like I could be hitting him and like things could be worse. Like that. Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're not hitting him.
The fact this is not endorse or condone child abuse in any way, shape, or form.
So what advice would you give somebody early on in sobriety?
Find people. Like I remember I was probably a couple weeks sober, and like I said, I love science. So I was doing some research and stuff, and like they've done studies on like addiction and what leads to addiction. And like they started feeding these mice cocaine in their water, and they eventually found out that mice will then isolate themselves, or if you isolate them in general, they will literally drink it till they die. But if you keep them in a group, maybe one or two might go and test it out, but the majority of them will not. And so that is my biggest advice, is find people that you can bounce ideas off of. Because like if I didn't have the guys around me that had gone through very similar things and like lived the experiences, would I be here? Probably not. I probably would have just gone right back to what I was doing and probably would have been dead at least 6 years ago. But like find those people and have fun. Like I got lucky. I got sober when I was 35 or 25. I'm 35 now.
I was like, damn.
No, I know black don't crack, but I'm not that old. But so I got sober young, and like I see a lot of guys who get sober older, and so like, well, how do you have fun when you're older? And like, no, you're not gonna go out and play volleyball and do all these things that we did, but like find something that makes you happy, because drugs and alcohol were what made me happy. Like that was my happy place, and like now I can't do that. So what makes me happy? And like I was told early on, like go back to before you started drinking and using, and what did you enjoy? And I was like, dude, I was 12 years old. What do you mean? What did I enjoy doing? Like I played video games and I ran around outside. He was like, all right, go play some video games and run around outside and then tell me how you feel. So I literally went the next day and climbed a tree. I was like, oh shit, this stuff is really fun still. Like, why did I stop doing this?
Oh my god!
Hell yeah.
Dude, that's the thing I noticed as I get older. Like the shit that I thought was cool at 14 is still like cool now. Like
Every time I go to a playground and there's a swing set, like before I had my knee surgery, like before I tore my ACL, like I would still jump off as I was swinging as high as I could. After I had my knee surgery, I was like, all right, that's a little bit too much on my knees. Like I gotta not
sure you're
land
not
from
45?
10. Hey, I had an ACL repair. It's not
this
a
motherfucker would walk around for like 5 years straight with just a giant brace like a goddamn lineman on his
Well,
leg.
it happened on one leg first, and then it happened on the literally
shit.
I remember looking at it in my Facebook memories. It was legitimately a year and a day apart.
Oh.
Like I hurt my knee, didn't need surgery, and a year and a day later, I tore my ACL and my meniscus in my right knee, and then eventually needed surgery. Yeah. And yeah, like that was a rough because I was still at OSU, and like so going through OSU on crutches is a
Fucking
not
bitch.
fun.
nightmare.
No.
Not fun.
I will say though they do have a disability services that like you can set up for like a van to come pick you up in different spots, but also like I'm a broke college student, so like I would park away from campus, and so they would get as close as they could so that I didn't have to go as far, but then they would take me to every, like literally give them my schedule, be like, hey, I want to go here, here, and here at these times, and they would just pick me up, and I was like, oh. And I didn't learn that until like 3 weeks after being on crutches. So like I got my shoulders got real strong, my arms got real strong, and then I was like, oh, I don't need to do all this. And I learned how to use my resources.
Hell yeah. Using your resources.
That's it.
Well, Tyler,
necessary.
thank you so much for coming on. This was great. And last thing before we close, because you're talking about the knee surgeries. Off camera, you were telling me that softball is not a man's sport and you wouldn't be caught dead playing it. What do you mean by that? Feel free to speak. It's a Mental Defectives podcast. It's Miller Graham, Jeremy, G. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you next time. Like and subscribe.
We did win that championship though.